Hello there, World of Tankers. Welcome back to another one of my videos. I am Blitz, and in this video today I'm going to be talking about the T26E5 Sheriff, which is just at the stores for 15,000 gold. And yes, you heard me right, 15,000. That is just such an expensive price tag, especially for it being a Tier 8 premium. So as always, in this video I'm going to be telling you guys my full opinion and breakdown on this tank, all the tricks and tips you need to know about it, the armor profile, and as well how to take it out on the battlefield if you do counter one. And as always, in the end of this video, I'm also going to be talking about my full opinion on the tank and whether or not you should be sticking this tank in your garage. Now, what is so special about the Sheriff? What makes it such an expensive vehicle? Now, you can see it does have a very, very good damage per minute. It's actually got a 6.2 second reload, and because of that amazing reload and the 240 average damage this tank gets per shot, it gives this tank a 2,500 average damage per minute. Now, just to put that in comparison, an AMX CDC, which is a very, very strong Tier 8 medium tank, one of the best damage per minute medium tanks at Tier 8, has 2,400. So this Tier 8 heavy tank is sitting at more average damage per minute than the Tier 8 medium counterpart. So that's just giving you an example of how good that damage per minute is. Not to mention, this is an American vehicle, and as most Americans do, this tank has 10 degrees of gun depression. So very good on that characteristic as well. And you may be thinking, well, the gun characteristics must be just awful on the handling and the penetration. Well, you'll also be fooled on that. You can see right now I'm penetrating through the superstructure of a Ferdinand with very, very relative ease right through the turret of that IS-6. The standard pen on this tank is 232. Now that is with calibrated. When you take off the calibrated, it's about 220. But there's really no point to not run calibrated on this vehicle. It just gives the tank so much more penetration. The heat pen goes from 200 and I think 60 to 297. So you definitely want to run the calibrated on this tank because it's just going to make this tank so much more effective and you're not going to bounce as many shells. But you can already see 2,600 damage racked up in this game. When I was pushing on that IS-3 earlier, I literally took 1,000 hit points off of him when he was able to shoot one shell back at me, and not to mention he even missed the shell. So this is the ultimate noob killing tank. However, there must be some sort of downfall if this tank has just such an amazing gun and it's got just one of the best damage per minute in the entire Tier 8 class. And yes, it does. The speed is not the downfall, actually, believe it or not. The speed on this tank is 40 kilometers per hour, and that's pretty good, judging that it is a heavy tank. But as you know, with a tank that has good speed and an amazing gun and good gun depression, there is one thing that this tank is going to be lacking, and that is in the armor department. This tank does not have spectacular armor at that. And just wait until I bring up the armor profile of the tank. It is one of the biggest downfalls of this tank, especially because it is marketed as a heavy tank. But you can see this game so far, 3,700 damage in just that quick 2.5 minute game. Man, is that gun impressive. It really can just rack out the damage. It keeps on shooting. It just goes one after another. You can also see this tank earns quite a large amount of credits. 137,000 credits earned this game. Now, don't get fooled by that number. I do have a credit booster on because I am trying to earn a lot of credits for this Blitz fair. But even without that credit booster on, we still earned around 100,000 credits. That is just ridiculous how many credits these premiums do earn. And for some reason, the Americans just earn a ludicrous amount. So it's not a bad credit earner at that. And I also think this tank looks just fantastic. So let's get stuck right into that second replay. Now, as I said, there is one big downfall, and that is the armor profile. As you can see, I am bringing up a little clip of it. The front of the tank is just completely green, and this is an IS-3 aiming at it with its standard ammo. Now, it is relatively thick. The upper plate's about 190 millimeters, but that's it. That's all the relative thickness is. So that means pretty much any tank that you're going to go up against at Tier 8 can easily penetrate you with even its standard ammunition. An IS-3 sitting at around 220 pen, that'll go through your tank even at the greatest angle you can possibly do with your armor. Any German heavy, any tanks pretty much, even like a T32, which has one of the worst penetration values in the game, can still pretty easily penetrate this tank right through the front. And that's the upper plate, by the way. The lower plate's only sitting at around 160. So that is one of the big downfalls of this tank. First of all, is the front armor. Now, the turret you can see is a lead magnet. It is just like the T34, and that is one really nice thing about the tank, is it's just got such a strong turret. And even it does have that cupola, but the cupola is still about 220 thick, so don't be fooled by that. Do not try and shoot at the cupola, because more than enough times you'll probably bounce right off of it. You can see right here, this E50 cannot penetrate through my turret. It's just such a strong turret. I'm not sure why it is, but it's just an amazing turret, and it looks just like a Pershing turret, so it is pretty impressive just how strong it really is. But again, the side armor of this tank, believe it or not, it is exactly the same as a Pershing. And because of that, that pretty much means that any 150mm shell that gets shot at the side of this vehicle at any angle will automatically penetrate due to the 3 calibers rule. So unfortunately, the side armor of this tank is just completely awful. And I tested this out actually with a friend. I had a friend shoot me with his RHM when I was trying to angle this tank pretty much at an almost 90-degree angle, and the shell went right through my side, lighting me on fire too, which was pretty funny. But that is one thing you definitely need to keep in mind, is do not try and side scrape in the Sheriff, because the armor is just pretty much abysmal on the sides, and the front, even though, as I said, it's about 190 thick, really, it's not going to be bouncing anything, maybe some tier 7s, but again, as soon as those tier 7 players load premium ammo, which they most likely will do, the armor is just going to fall apart. But you can see we have managed to bounce a couple shells this game, blocking 1,010 damage, but the other issue with this tank, and that sort of combines with the armor, is the gun's damage. It's only 240. So that T54 right there, being a tier 9 medium, he's doing 310 average damage, which is quite a bit more average damage than my tank is doing, which means that that T54 can effectively shoot one shell into me, and I'm going to shoot one back, and if that T54 can back into cover and then reload, that T54 is just going to be easily tapping shell after shell into me, dealing more damage than I'm going to be doing back to him. But you can also see, again, that T54 was easily able to penetrate both of those shells into me. That one pretty much went into my tank's track wheel just at a 90-degree angle because, as most of you know, American tanks' track wheels just suck. So again, the armor is not really that good, so don't mistake in the armor on this tank. Pretty much play this tank like a full-fledged medium. And that's what the main issue I had with this tank when I first picked it up. I actually have a video posted on it. I'm going to be taking it down because I'm very, very harsh on the video, but I was just so irritated with the tank's performance as a heavy, and that's because I really wasn't running it like a medium, because it's not a medium tank. It is marketed as a heavy vehicle. In the video they show of the tank, they pretty much show it demolishing enemy heavy tanks, easily bouncing shells from them, and that's not really how the tank really plays out. It more plays out like a medium tank. So if you do pick up this vehicle, do not expect it to be a heavy, expect it to be a medium tank. You can see there I was just able to tear apart that Type 59, but again, if that Type 59 was a smart player, if I was in the Type 59, I could have easily just tapped shell after shell right into the, even if I loaded APCR, I could have just tapped APCR shells right into the upper plate of this tank, backed up, waited for my tank to reload, pull back out again, snap the shell, and it's not very hard to take out this tank. For example, that E75 over there does 460 average damage, and 240 pen, that's easily going to go through my tank pretty much anywhere he aims. And I can only pen him pretty much with my heat ammo, so I'm dealing, 220 average damage now, 200 average damage, so pretty much it's going to take me 2 shells to even somewhat even out the damage one of his shells is going to be doing, and he's going to have to barely even aim at me to penetrate. I have to aim at him quite some time to be able to get some nice shells through. So that is a really big downfall of this tank, is you really cannot afford to trade shells with enemy vehicles. And unfortunately here I made a pretty bold decision. I tried to climb this ridge and it did not work out too well, and because of that, unfortunately we do get taken right out by that E75. But you can see 4,129 damage dealt in this game, 1,290 blocked. As you saw, most of the tanks that I blocked were mediums. As soon as I had a tank like that E75 push out on me, there was really nothing I could have done there to block that shot. But you can see the tank does very, very well in the given situation, but you definitely need to use the gun depression and the turret armor to your advantage. You can see we did win this game. Again, 134,000 credits. I still am running the credit booster though, so about 100,000 credits in profits. Now, there's another thing I do want to say about this tank, which is a downfall in my opinion, is actually your teammates. Now, if your team falls apart when you're running this vehicle, you are going to just get demolished because it's quick, but it's not super quick. It goes 40 kilometers per hour. And when you're pushing this tank medium side, what's going to end up happening is, if you've got like, let's even just say like an AMX CDC or a T44, they're going to very, very quickly get into the medium positions. Not only that, they're spawning at medium side. You're spawning at the heavy position, so you're going to have to maneuver all the way around to get to the medium side when you're running this tank. So what's going to end up happening sometimes, or at least half of the games you play, is your medium tanks are just going to rush in there and die, and that's it. And then what's going to happen is you're going to be alone in your heavy tank while the rest of your team's on the other side of the map because your mediums are dead, and you're just going to get pushed on and pretty much outflanked and outmaneuvered by the enemy mediums because this tank isn't quick enough to evade once you're stuck in a scenario. If you are up against enemy mediums and you're going to be overrun by them, my best guess is pretty much just to shoot and go down guns ablazing because you are definitely not going to be getting out of that situation alive. And just take a look at how sweet this camouflage is this tank gets. If you do pick it up, make sure you get it with this camo because I do want to give props to Wargaming. They did an amazing job on this camouflage. Now, a little bit of tips on you want to know how to run this vehicle if you do pick it up. First thing is make sure you read the team lineups because you definitely need to make an educated guess and advanced planning ahead of time on where you're going to be pushing. Every game I play nowadays, I definitely look at the team roster. I didn't used to do that, and that's why I really didn't like the Sheriff before. It was because I wasn't looking at what the enemy tanks had and what my team had. So I'd push it somewhere and I'd just die because I didn't know what heavy tank or what medium tank I was about to fight, and they would just get spotted and it wouldn't go well for me, or I wouldn't look at what tank destroyers the enemy team's running. You definitely need to run accordingly to positions where you see where your team's going. You need to definitely adjust. You need to pre-plan all of your moves. That's one thing you really need to know in this tank. As well, know your limits. Don't push out on like an RHM because even though if you have a clear shot on him, if he has a clear shot on you, pretty much expect him to easily go through your tank at any angle unless you're using your 10 degrees of gun depression. And you definitely don't want to trade shots with enemy tanks when they're going to have the ability to back up and easily get into cover. So that is one thing to keep in mind with this tank. Now, you can see, though, in these games I played, I did fairly well, and I actually am starting to like this tank. I'm starting to grow on it. One funny thing about me is when I usually don't like tanks, I play them so much that eventually I try to figure out a way to run it, and I really did figure out a way to run this tank, and I actually am starting to like it as I did say. So it is a pretty strong vehicle in the right scenarios. Now, the big question is this tank worth that large, expensive price tag? And no, it definitely isn't worth it. It is a good tank. It can do the job, but there's other tanks that can do the job just as well. There's tanks like the T26E4, which is pretty much a more armored, it's a little bit slower, but it's pretty much just a better version of this tank in my opinion. It's a little different. I actually like this version better now, the T26E5 than the E4. However, they play just so similarly. There's no point to buy the T26E5 if you do own the E4 in your garage. I'd say maybe if this tank was half the price, 7,000 gold, maybe pick it up because then it is, pretty fun to run. It is actually a pretty decent vehicle. But, for 15,000, like, come on, Wargaming, are you serious? And not to mention, right now the T95E6 is in the store for $50. And pretty much it's the same price as a Tier 8 T26E5 Sheriff. Like, really? Who in their right minds would buy the Sheriff over buying a T95E6? There's just absolutely no point. So if you're thinking about buying, any of the tanks in the store right now, pick up the 95E6 over the Sheriff any day of the week. It's just not even a comparison. And even like the Badger, still pick up that 95E6. I just want to say that a little bit of a thing out of the way. The 95E6 is an excellent tank. I really, really like it. And I definitely would suggest to pick it up if you don't own it, because $50 really is not that expensive for a Tier 10 heavy. But yes, I don't think this tank is worth it. If you do want to add it to your collection, you probably will like it. That is one thing I do want to say. But yeah, sadly it is not worth the price, so hopefully Wargaming does do some really nice stuff in the Blitz Fair. It doesn't make it all about gambling. The reason I hated this tank as well so much when it first came out was just because it was a gamble. It took me quite a few crates to open it. Get it. It was about $150 worth of money spent overall with help of patrons and everything else to pick up this tank. And was it worth that price? Unfortunately, I still don't think it was worth even the price I had to pay to get it. So yes, don't pick up the tank, but overall, a very, very strong vehicle, and I hope you guys did enjoy this video. As always, make sure to smash that like button if you did. If you didn't enjoy this video and you disagree with my opinion, or it's something to do with my old video I have posted on it and it's something I did wrong, please let me know in the comments down below. I love to accept criticism in any helpful way, as long as you're not harsh to me. But other than that, I hope you did enjoy this. As always, make sure to subscribe for more content to help you guys know whether or not you should be picking up these tanks. And I'll see you in the next one, guys. Have a good one.